Welcome to Positive Filter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career with a little self-help around the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope that what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Filter. I'm joined by a special guest. As I said, everyone is a special guest because they're a friend to me. I'm joined by Nancy. Now, Nancy and I are now social distancing, but we've been very close, and we got to know each other when we used to work at the same college. But now Nancy has moved to the land of the Midwest and left me, and but we stayed connected. And I said, you know what? We didn't get our chance to do our podcast episode in person in VA, but we're gonna still get it done. And no matter what time or distance, I was gonna bother her until she said yes. And so luckily for me, she did, and we got time. I think a lot of us got time right now.
Yeah, we have a lot of time.
We have a lot of time to be creative and knock out some podcasts and some creative endeavors. But what really connected me, and I'm gonna get to introducing Nancy in a minute, is that we are both very positive, very upbeat people, and we like to express ourselves in creative realms, whether it's writing, music, whatever. And so I was like, well, let me get you on the podcast about that, because that's a great thing to talk about. But for the listeners that don't know who you are, go ahead and introduce yourself, Nancy.
Yeah, so I am so happy that we finally, this is the beauty of what's happening in the world right now, where we have time. And I am just so honored to be part of this. It's been a long time overdue. And so in my previous life, I worked in the field of gender-based violence as an educator and advocate. And so I have worked with friends and family members and students who has experienced domestic violence and sexual violence. And so one common thread that I found is that in any kind of traumatic experience or a person's mental health, well-being, healing process is an ongoing journey. And so through my own healing journey, I've discovered arts and crafts and writing and storytelling to be powerful tools to move beyond the pain, the stress, the anxiety, to live authentically and a well-being life. And so I know the big turning point was 2018, when I needed a space. I needed a creative space, and I joined. I really miss them. A studio called Studio Pause. Shout out to Studio Pause and Sush and my student members there, and they really helped me foster that creative side of myself outside of work. And so, ever since then, I've been just making time just to be creative.
So Nancy, I've learned a little bit by following you on social media about a new culture. Well, not a new culture. It's been around for ages, but a new culture to me is, and please forgive me if I mispronounce this, the Hmong people. And I love how you share the journey of Hmong people in the United States, and can you, for the listeners, talk about how you integrate that culture? First of all, for listeners, what that culture is or where they're from, and how you integrate that into your art and into your healing principles.
Right. And so it's Hmong. It's the H is silent, so you can just
yeah, see, I knew I was gonna mess that up, but yeah, it gave me some credit. And I was like, Hmong. I'm probably gonna go to a room. So Hmong people, yes.
Yeah, Hmong people. And so, to be honest, that's a great question. And my journey has been trying to connect with my roots. And so I have really taken back to really look at myself through creatively, but through the lens of my Hmong culture. And so oh, who are the Hmong people? And
Yeah.
so my family, especially my grandparents and my parents' generation, came to United States. They were war refugees from Laos.
Okay.
They participated in a secret war. It's a covert operation that was led and funded by the U.S. Department, the CIA agency,
Mm,
to combat communism in Laos. During this
mm,
whole time, the U.S. needed a, a, a small group of people to help fight the war, to combat communism. And the Hmong people were a small hill tribe group in northern Laos, and they became that group that was trained to fight communism, pretty much to cut supplies, because it was with the
mm.
North Vietnam versus South Vietnam.
Gotcha.
And so the Ho Chi Minh Trail, that was the trail or the way of supplying war supplies. It cut into Laos, and so um, the Hmong soldiers, which is my grandparents, my grandpa, and my father, that was their territory in terms of trying to cut supplies and helping the U.S. soldiers. Eventually, they lost the war. Communism took over, and
Yeah.
my community became refugees. We're seen as rebels to the
Yes.
Lao government. And so my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation had to flee. A lot of my Hmong friends who were my age, they came here at a very young age too. So they would be considered like the 1.5 generation. I was
Gotcha.
born here in the United States. So if you were to meet someone who are in their 40s, 30s, the majority of them came here to the United States at a very young age, or they were born here. So I was
So
born
in
in
the
the 80s.
70s, 80s, early, late
Yeah,
70s. So
right. Yeah.
is and so the Hmong people is not tied to a country. Is it tied to an ethnic group? And, and
Yes.
is this ethnic group not just in Laos? Are they in different countries?
Right, they are different countries. So we're a stateless group of people that have
Okay.
resettled from southern China. So we're all spread out between southern China all the way to Burma,
Mhm.
Vietnam, Laos. Let's see. There's a couple after the war, the secret war in the 1970s. Some of them have resettled in Australia, France,
Gotcha.
Guyana. Um, yeah. So,
And so,
mhm.
and so in regards to your culture and study in art, what do you think? For instance, and we can't do huge general huge generalizations about a whole culture, like because no people is a monolith, right? Like not all
Yeah.
black people express art the same way.
Mhm.
But if you were to say there's a
Mhm.
certain flavor to Hmong people art, or maybe Hmong influence on your art, what would that be?
Oh gosh. It will be so I'm very detail oriented,
Mhm.
and I think what comes to mind is the cross stitch, the bandao. It
Okay.
is because it ties back to being a stateless group of people.
Yes.
And so writing system has been banned back in the back thousands of years ago, where my community were supposed to speak the dominant language, but
Mm,
because we want to overcome that, and it also is a statement where the women, some of the actually the Hmong, I think it's both men and women, they embedded our language in our clothing, and so it's
mm,
through embroidery, through stitching, different symbols on our clothing. And so to me, I think that's art in self, to keep record of
mhm.
your
Yep.
own traditions, your own language, your own culture. So I find that beauty in itself. And also music wise,
Yes.
um, I come from a very musical family. When I was young, I joined show choir. I even thought I was going to be a singer too myself, but
Mm,
I'm not. But I think it's the words, using words
yeah.
is a way to express myself very creatively. Mental health, I grew up with the word mental health was on a very negative connotation where like you don't talk about that. It's
Hmm.
just and also learning how to talk about that. Like how do you talk about mental health? Like when someone is not feeling well,
Hmm.
not so much like you're sick to the stomach, it's more psychologically
Hmm.
challenged, or you just need a therapist. I didn't learn how to do that. However, the Hmong have really used music.
Yeah.
We have a we call it it's very poetic. It's guzhia, so it's a very traditional way of expressing yourself through
Hmm.
spoken word, but in a very poetic way through guzhia. And
Yeah.
when someone who is very artistically, poetically, when they sing or they haikutia, they call it singkutia, performs this type of poetic song, it allows people to cry, and it's
Yeah.
okay to cry
Yeah.
during these
Yeah.
moments. But when someone's not singing these songs, it's not okay to cry. And so music has been a way to just to let go. And
Yeah.
I feel like our culture, I'm speaking of my own culture, we don't give enough credit for those who have this kind of art
Yeah.
capability, whether it's vocal and whether it's the kutsia art skills. And so, yeah. So to answer your question, it's words and the detailed
And the
embroideries.
tone and all that. I mean,
Yeah,
it kind of alludes to me, and I was thinking the whole time, it reminds me of
yeah,
blues for Black people.
yeah.
Like there has been a huge stigma for mental health in the Black community. But if
Mm,
someone sings a really sad song in blues, that
yeah,
could be like, okay, that's acceptable. Like you sing, like you hear such sad songs in blues where it
yeah.
could move you to tears, but like obviously you're not going to cry just having a normal conversation with someone.
Right.
Or a similar the power of words, like when you know
Yeah.
language or writing was I guess restricted, forbidden for
Yeah.
slaves. They
Mhm,
learned other techniques to teach, like oral history and passing it down, or dance, which I learned
mhm.
a while ago. Is like you could tell a story through how you danced, right?
Yeah.
So from what I'm hearing for
Mhm.
your people too, there
Yeah.
was a there is a social justice aspect embedded into the art, and then
Yes.
there's also a not just
Mhm.
social justice part, but there's also the well-being and mental health part was embedded into the art, but coded
Right.
in a different way.
That is so beautiful. You said it beautifully, Phil.
Yeah.
I'm getting emotional. Oh my God, that is so beautiful. Yes.
So like let's say through your
Mhm.
journey, when you started combining, I guess more, I'm not saying Western, but more
Yeah.
Western ideals of like it's more acceptable to cry, it's more acceptable to
Mhm.
express yourself. When did this start? When did that journey for you start? Where you started kind of branching away from your cultural stigmas of mental health. When did that start for you?
It started when I've cried enough, right? When I started learning, so my field, like I mentioned before, my field
Yeah,
has been in the gender based violence field
yeah,
where I've cried enough. I've been in moments where, oh my gosh, this whole like these moments of trigger. I've done this. I've gone over and over, and I'm like, I'm sick of this. I don't want to go through this traumatic experience. Like, what can I do? What can I
hmm,
do? And I've let go, like, it's okay. I've told myself it's okay to cry. Like, I've
hmm,
cried enough. And there'll be moments where I may not be able to hold myself, and it's okay. And I'm going to let go, whether it's going to be at a lecture, whether it's going to be in
hmm,
public, and it's okay. And I think being okay to be vulnerable, that's just so powerful in itself, whether it's to share, to cry. So it took a long journey. So it's not a easy answer to your question, but it took a
No,
long
but was
journey.
it more through, like, for instance, for me, and I'll be totally
Yeah,
vulnerable. Like, I didn't
yeah,
grow up talking about feelings and
yeah.
processing and all that stuff, and so I think two major factors, maybe more,
Mhm.
I guess, would raise my EQ or my emotional intelligence for
Yeah.
myself. Is one is when I met my wife, or then when
Mhm.
she was my girlfriend. She came
Okay.
from a family that talked a lot, and when I was an 18-year-old
Yeah.
boy, she'd always poke at me until we talked our issues out, right? And I was like, just leave me alone. Because I was the type of person, if I got upset, I would just, I would shut off. I was a
Yeah.
very quiet person.
Mhm.
Surprise, like, right, like me
Yeah.
being quiet. And then I think the second most
Yeah.
influential time about feelings and processing is when I actually went through my counseling program at George Mason, where
Yeah.
I learned, well, if I wanted to help other people, I started learning this and learning that and learning the
Uh-huh.
power of therapy and stuff like that. And then I was like, you know what? Like, these are things where I like started to look at things in a bigger picture, and my empathy grew. And so it
Mhm.
was those educational times that did challenge the way I was growing up.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it was your education, your job that did that for you?
Yeah, no, thank you. Yes, I think a lot of it, when I was, so I took a lot of courses on feminist theory, took courses
Hmm.
in women and gender studies. I read a lot of Black feminist theories, a lot of
Hmm.
books, Patricia Hill Collins,
Hmm.
and also Kimberly Crenshaw. The whole idea behind intersectionality and
Hmm.
identities, that really helped me understand myself as a woman of color, as a child war refugee, to really
Hmm.
understand, situate myself in the world. Like, why am I feeling like this? And
Hmm.
how does this relate to gender-based violence? Like, I'm not the only one. There's different women of color,
Hmm.
or that I have worked with, or marginalized communities that I work with, where like we're experiencing similar things, but it just looks very different.
Hmm.
And another, so like educating myself, like, okay,
Hmm.
what's happening to me? I'm not the only one, and it is part. It's a part of a system, right?
Gotcha.
And then so that's the kind of, like, I call it the theory, the education part. But in terms
Hmm.
of practicality, as I mentioned before, I joined a studio, an art studio, a creative studio, and every week we have writing pause. And so now that we're social distancing, we get to do it online. And now that I've left, I've relocated to the Midwest. I get to meet with them on Google Hangout, and it's a 2 hour for us just to write that inspires you, and we'll pick a piece of art that's hanging around our studio, and whatever that piece of art speaks to you, just write about it. And what I realized, that when I write about it, it's really, I'm writing about what has happened to me on that day or that week, what's
Hmm.
been bothering me, and we get to share about it. And so it's like an outlet for me just to share my thoughts through this piece of art piece that I've been looking at for a good 10 minutes. And I just feel better after a while. So, like, having a support system is really important.
So I love that.
Mhm.
It so bring me back to the point. So I love that idea about writing it out.
Yeah.
How did you find that group? Like, what made you think, okay, let me, spoken word, whatever. And I think maybe this is probably where we're gonna go into the intersection of art and healing. Was it just like one day, like, yo, I'm gonna just Google writing groups and join them? Like, how did that happen? Or did you always want to be a writer? Or like, how did that come about?
So, to answer your question about I never really thought about myself as a writer.
Hmm.
Uh, I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot of research paper because I had to fulfill a degree, I had to fulfill a grade, I had to pass my course. Writing, I was at a point where, like, I've been writing all my life. I've been in school for the longest time,
Hmm.
and in 2018, I'm like, I'm gonna write for myself. But it didn't come right away. And then so I
Hmm.
met my friend Mary. She is a really, really good friend of mine. I love her energy. I love her, just what she does. She runs Indigo Lion, which she does. She goes back to Laos and she brings back beautiful textiles, and then
Hmm.
she helps. It's a fair trade, and then she helps women in Laos. It's women. So she sources textile from Laos, and she also supports the women who makes those textiles. And so
Gotcha.
she goes to Laos, and that's where my homeland is. So we connected on Laos. And then she was also part of Studio Pause. And I met her one day, and we sat the whole night just talking about our interest in Laos. And we also went to the same grad school too. And she introduced me to Studio Pause, and we started writing. And I started coming to, and that's how I found
Hmm.
them. And they're located in Arlington, Virginia. Um,
Nice. And so when you
yeah.
started, take us
Mhm.
through the first time you went there and you were like, were you super nervous to write? Were you super nervous to do the share out part? Or you were just like, this is awesome off the break?
I was so 2018, I forgot to mention this. I also decided that I'm going to write a blog. I'm going to start a blog.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to start a blog. And so that's nancyxiong.com. I'm sure Phil's going to include that.
Oh, yes.
Write
100%.
a blog. I'm just gonna do it. There's a lot of things I want to share about my own self as a Hmong American woman, as a child of war refugees, and I gotta do this. I gotta share this with my siblings um, who I don't see often. I gotta share this with other younger Hmong women who are seeking for
Mm.
uh, mentorship. And so I'm like, okay, I gotta do this, but I've got that whole website going on, but I also needed that support. That's just momentum, that more support. And so that's when my studio members came in and I was ready to go. I was like, this is great, right? And then share. And so it was just, it was a very encouraging support system that I had for
So it's
with them.
almost like getting reps. Like, for instance,
Yeah,
I wanted to become a better public speaker, so I joined Toastmasters.
yeah, yep.
Similar thing where it's like a structured thing. You get direct feedback or maybe an audience, or I could practice public speaking in front of my webcam, but it was just good to have like a real audience for once. And
Yeah,
maybe for you it was like you can write and write, but maybe you actually had an audience to review or read your writing at the spot, which
right.
probably it's
That
and it's
response.
like a supportive thing. Like you want that feedback. Like I wanted that feedback
Yeah.
to like, what's better? How do I get better at speaking? Or
Mhm.
learn how to pause or learn how to use my
Right.
hands better and stuff like that. So I was like seeking those opportunities. So similar to you, the first time I went to Toastmasters, I wasn't nervous. They were like, does anyone want to talk? Their first time I raised my hand, I was ready to go. But that's
Yeah.
because I actively, similar to you, I actively looked for a group that was
Yes.
focused on that activity. Like
Mm-hmm.
you were looking for a writing group, I'm going to join.
Right, right.
So we want to talk to kind of go further, and you said,
Sure.
I know a lot of the stuff you write is really wonderful. I actually think I remember when you had your podcast and just the way
Mhm.
you speak in poetry. Where when did you find that not only was this just good to like for the Hmong people, but this was starting to become a healing or creative outlet for you? Like, wow, this really feels good for me too. This is like, if I never saw a therapist again, I can
Yeah,
really just use this creative art form. I mean, we still need to see. I mean, I'm not
yeah,
saying not see a therapist, but if that resource was not available to you, did that, would that feel like it could be healing in that sense?
right. How is it? So, oh, that's a loaded question. In terms of there's the magic. I think going back to one of your questions about writing,
Mm-hmm.
there's some magic that when whatever's in your mind, your head, your heart, and it's transfer from inside through your arm to your middle to your fingers onto
Mm-hmm.
paper because I'm one of those people where I still write things and then I type it up, and
Yeah.
there's so much power in that where you express all your thoughts onto paper,
Mm-hmm.
and then that whole and that the pipeline from there on to voicing it out onto podcasts or into
Yes.
website.
Yes.
That's a whole transformation journey in itself too, and it's so powerful. And I do it so that way it's an escape. um it's
Mm-hmm.
it's to it's release as to what's going on in my head, in my heart, in my mind, so that way
Mm-hmm.
I can, and during that process I'm able to like solve my own issue, like, oh my gosh, this is
Yes.
happening,
Yeah.
I can do this better. Oh, Nancy, that wasn't so bad. You were just overthinking it. Now I can do this better. So it's a lot of internal processing through that whole writing process. So I hope that makes sense. Like,
No, no, I literally, Nancy, that's why I rock with you, Song, because that makes sense. Because sometimes I get that same feeling. I get that same feeling when I want to. Sometimes I get these random thoughts in my head for like a speech. So
yeah,
then I just hit my voice recorder and I
yeah,
just start talking and
yeah,
just rambling. And then I listen to it over again.
yeah,
And then I like, okay, it needs to be better this way. And then I write it out and
yeah,
then I try over again. So
Yeah.
I understand the process, even in your own making drafts,
Yeah.
put it on someone else and I mean, put it like by yourself and even recycling your own process and making it fine tuned. Like, oh, I really meant to say this. So you're doing it with the paper, but sometimes I do that with my
Yes.
own voice. Like I'll
Yes.
record it
Right.
on my phone.
Yep.
I listen to it. I'm like, oh, that's not how I wanted it. And then I try again. So it's kind of similar. And
Okay.
I bet there's so many different people that do that, like artists, they like
Yeah.
feel it. They just feel it. They start playing, they
Yep.
record it, and they're like, yo, okay, this is the raw version. Let
Mhm.
me tighten it up. But they
Yeah.
want to get it out while it's really there in that moment. Like,
Uh-huh.
and I
Mhm.
think I definitely agree that
Yeah.
sometimes the best time is to really just do the pen to paper, get it
Yeah.
out, look
Mhm.
at it over again, and then do it over again. So I totally
In
get that.
whatever avenues, whether it's Post-it notes, whether it's like sketching on the whiteboard,
Yeah, yeah.
while you were explaining, made me thought like my staff right now. I have a very small staff. We're trying to work out a problem. I put them up on our whiteboard and we sketch it out. We brainstorm it until we figure it out, and it's just so powerful to see it
Mm.
big in front of us, but yet voicing it out and drawing it out or sketching it out. It's just so powerful.
And then you fine tune it.
Yeah.
And I think that do you believe that there's like
Hmm.
I mean left brain, right brain, like maybe that we're just weird people and like
Yeah.
and we're different, we process different, like, or
Yes.
do you really think that that's just everyone is needs that kind of
I
creativity?
think, yes, I think everyone needs that kind of creativity. I feel like depends on how your upbringing was, or your environment, or what are your priorities. But this, the studio pause really ingrained in me. I think the mission or the logo is that we are creative. We are all creative, but we
Hmm.
don't have time. We don't have time to pause. That's why it's called studio pause. Like
Oh, I thought
every
it was like paws like the dog.
No,
Like,
like doing a pause. Like we come
uh,
together and pause and to make art,
I
to
like that.
write.
I like
Yeah, and that's so beautiful. And so my dear friend Sushmita came up with that. And so studiopause.com. That's
I
her
like it, and I think it
logo.
is true. You know me, I probably need to slow down. I'm always going. You know me. Um, I can't
Yeah.
slow down. I can't. That's just the way I am. So,
Mhm.
so you're fine tuning it, and
Yeah.
have you let's take it to the next level. I know that you've started to do workshops and use this as art
Mm.
as a healing tool for others. When
Yeah,
did
I
you start
have.
experimenting and not experimenting, but per se taking it from an individual pursuit for yourself and thinking of it as
Yeah.
a opportunity to help other people? How did that transformation happen? When did that happen?
I started incorporating creativity in my class,
Okay.
the students that I've taught, and I've seen the results. I've seen myself, I love incorporating creativity. Whether my teaching style is not a lecturing style, it's more of a very engaged. I want my students to be up and learning. I mean, learning. They're doing it very hands-on, and so my assignments were very creative. And I have a couple of choices that they can choose, whatever makes most sense to them. And I found it how powerful it is. Um, because I understand that people, they connect differently, whether
Hmm.
it's through writing, through making a PowerPoint. That's art in itself. Making, I think one of the activity I love is the story cloth. See, this is where I incorporate my own Hmong culture in, where I have my students do create their own story cloth. But I share about my own history of story cloth, and they had, I think the majority of my students really enjoy that. They get to express who they are, but in a very creative way, and also it's a non-threatening way. So I, so sorry to my students. You were kind of like my guinea pigs.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of people, I ain't gonna lie, a lot of my students too, randomly, even in career services, are guinea pigs. I just be like, and
But
then, like, just try random positivity activities. Right on this note card. Take this Polaroid. Who cares? They're guinea pigs because I would just try it out, and then it's fun for me. And then usually I try to do it. I mean, when I say guinea pigs, like my well-being activities that I try with people, like
yes,
like take a picture of you and write what you're grateful for. I'm just making it up as I go along, but then I realized that it was fun. And
It's fun and it's so powerful. And from there on, outside beyond academia, I started branching it, attending conferences. And I
okay,
first, let's see, last November, I took one of my create my activities that I've done with my students to a Hmong Women Summit, and really, uh, test it out with Hmong women, my peers, and that um, was powerful in itself.
yeah.
And it was a, a few of the women who came, it was almost like a therapy session for them.
Yes, I was about to say, was there some, yeah, for them,
Yeah.
was it like, you felt like there was some cultural backlash, like maybe there's cultural backlash to therapy, but you think they were more open to these other activities?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
they say I've never met these women before, but they were ready to open. I'm like, whoa, I was not ready for that. I mean, I shouldn't say I was not ready. I'm so used to that because I work with students
Hmm.
who are comfortable being vulnerable with me. But like
Hmm.
from my own kind, I was like,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, you all are so trusting in me. Where here I am, I'm another sister, but I've been away from my community for so long. I've been living on the East Coast. I'm back. I'm just so thankful that they trust me, and that just inspires me to do more,
So
more kind of
what,
work.
when they trust you, how did they come out? Did they write a poem or write something, and that's where they were a little bit more vulnerable as opposed to something, like,
I
like, what,
Yeah,
like,
with
it was because it was a writing prompt? Like, how did they start? How did they
them,
open up to you? In what way?
a lot of times it's really I create space.
Yeah.
It's communal space is so important to me. When someone walks into my own space, I want to make sure that they're acknowledged. I want to make sure that they feel safe. And by doing that, I create group norms. I check in with them. I have them introduce themselves and ask them why they're here so that everybody knows, it feels comfortable and everyone knows, like, be heard. Like, it's so important to be heard once you come into this space, this foreign space. And then for me, it's really important, as the person who's leading the workshop, I get comfortable and I be vulnerable, and
Mhm.
that opens the door for my participants, my students, to be vulnerable. In terms of writing prompts, let's see, what did I do with
I mean,
them?
maybe just like in the workshop, what are some activities they do in this workshop? And then
Mhm.
when they're doing these activities, like, how is that, how do you know that they're being vulnerable? Like, are they crying when they're doing these activities,
Oh yeah,
or
they're
they
yeah.
come to you later at the very end and say something, or like, what is the activity? Like, like, take us, I mean, take us
Yeah.
through a workshop scenario where you're
Mhm.
using this art to help people heal.
Yeah. So for writing wise, I create a little journal for them and
Okay.
I pass it out. So
Okay.
one of my activities, I make journals,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's a powerful tool. I want to provide a tool for them to write. So
Hmm.
might as well make your own journal. And so
Hmm.
I create a little journal, and I did have writing prompts. One of the words, so the theme was one of the words, well, actually, one of the theme words was social justice, as we mentioned, and
Okay.
then the term healing. And so I asked, what does social justice mean to you? What does it look like? And we discussed a lot about being Asian Americans, being Hmong Americans. And that came out a lot. A lot of things came out because my workshop was storytelling um, towards a healing journey. And so
Mm.
that was more conversation. And then the second was healing. What does healing mean to you? What does it look like? And so that was another discussion itself. And it was just very, I was just so in awe.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
so let's say, what does healing mean to you? That you say, okay, what does healing mean to you? And then they just write for a little bit quietly, or you listen, or you play music in the background. How's that work?
Um, so depending on, most time I do put music in the background,
Hmm.
but we had very limited time, and so it
Hmm.
was just for a good like 5 minutes,
Okay.
and it was really quiet. It was more very calm and quiet, and so yeah,
And then they share it out if they were comfortable.
yeah, and they shared out. They were comfortable. Some who were not comfortable, but they were also in tears in solidarity with those who share too, and so
Wow.
um,
Wow.
that to me, that's a statement in itself,
Yeah, it
right?
is.
Yeah. And after the workshop, a few folks wrote to me, a few folks actually came up to me and just started, wanting to learn more and connect. Yeah. So,
Now, so would you say in these groups they're
yeah.
women or men or mostly, both or
So the workshop I'm talking about, so my students, the majority of the students I'm referring to are a mixture. The
okay.
majority are women, but I do have male. I do have folks who identify as LGBTQ
Yeah,
or non-conforming. This
yeah.
particular workshop for at the Hmong Women's Summit, I think the majority were identified as female,
Mm,
and yeah, and I think there was a trans woman as well too. So
hmm.
yeah,
Do you know, do you within the Hmong culture or
yeah,
just in general, have you experienced any, uh, I guess, say stigma or less men would be amped to participate in events like this or just, I don't know,
yeah,
like,
yeah. So
I,
I think if there's an opportunity for me, it's really important to work with all groups because I feel like everyone, depending on where they're at within their journey, within themselves, is really important. So to answer your question, I think your question is referring to like, would I be open to work with
that
men
was,
or
uh,
or or,
my,
or
my
the other would, yeah.
my question is more like, has men come towards you? Have you gotten some, some diverse people or even like backlash? Let's say like,
Mhm.
you tell a guy, hey, I'm doing these very healing workshops. Do you think
Mhm.
like guys are like, oh no, that's that macho, I ain't doing that, as opposed to a woman might be like more amped to participate? Have you noticed that or felt that at
I
all?
I think it's because of the spaces that I've been in.
Yeah.
I haven't encountered that. I've encountered a few women who are very reluctant to
Mm-hmm.
really dive into their feelings, like
Mm-hmm.
to that vulnerable part. One of a participant did come up to me. It's like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of work to do inside. And
Mm-hmm.
for some people, like I mentioned before, they're at different journeys. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard to go deep inside, and
Mm-hmm.
it takes time. And so I think in terms of um, for both men too, I think it depends on where they're at in their journey. But I come from I try to come from a very non-threatening way to speak
Yeah.
with them, to meet them where they're at. So it's very important because you never know what battles they're battling.
True.
You
That's
never
very true.
know what their history is or how they get, like, from the point that they are with me. I don't know how they got to where they are right now. And so it's really important. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your
Oh,
question.
it did. That actually did help. That now, how about, have you tried this out on your family, or like, have you had your family, join in these healing activities through creativity, or is your family creative? Or you said
Oh,
you do it through music. I mean, how bring the family into this
okay,
space?
so to be honest with you, you hit on a very good point in terms of men. My father's one of those macho men,
Yeah.
right? Where vulnerability is no, that's a no-no for him. He grew up like crying, that's shameful. You don't cry. Men don't cry. Like to be man, you gotta be tough. So I grew up with that. And so growing up, I never really see my dad cry. But yeah, I get emotional when I talk about this. It's when I was in my early 30s, I finally saw my dad cry. And it was through his own story and listening to him and how for him to share his children, his childhood. Um, so his dad passed away and was very young. He was passed around. So he can be considered a childless father. So there's stigma between among a child who was childless, and he was considered as an orphan. And his mother, which is my grandmother, had to marry because marriage, like survival, like you have to be married.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was passed around, and there was child abuse. And the only way to learn how to love was that's how he knew how to love. And this explains why I'm so into domestic violence, issue of gender-based violence. And so, to answer your question, have I tried this in terms of healing? I've tried just listening to my father,
Mm-hmm.
telling his own story, and learning about issues of social justice, intersectionality, feminist theories has really helped me understand my father in the whole systemic
Yes.
racial justice,
Yeah.
sexism, patriarchy. Um, Patriarchy does impact men too,
Yes, it does.
and my father is a product of that. Whether he knows it or not, he's a product of that. And so I listening to him, and just for him to share his own story is very healing for him,
Mm-hmm.
and also for me to really understand why the way he is. And so there you go. That's a loaded
No, that's
question.
a great one. I mean, like
Yeah,
I think that's similar to a lot of people's experiences. Or probably even,
right.
you know, me and, my father's experiences, we don't, it's not a normal thing to be very
Right,
vulnerable with other male figures. Um,
right.
but
Mhm,
I think that maybe people would be more amped, like maybe my dad would be more amped, or any
mhm.
male would be more amped if there was like like instead of crying about it, we would rap about it. Like we
Yeah.
I mean, like write a song or do some. I think
Mhm,
through those creative outlets, people will probably be more lenient to being
right.
vulnerable.
Uh-huh.
Like I listen to a lot of music, and you can hear like Pac and Biggie and all my favorite rappers, but
Yeah.
their best songs to me are the ones that are not like the party songs. The ones about losing
Mhm.
people, or you
Yeah.
know, feeling like things are hopeless, and sad songs. I feel
Mhm.
like those are the best songs to me, honestly. And so
Yeah.
I think, I don't
Mhm.
know, maybe I'll just be curious if your dad ever wrote some things out and he didn't have to cry about it, or like really be out loud and cry, but maybe he would have been more amped to writing it or singing
See,
about it, or, things like that.
it was not him, it was my sister and I, we wrote about it. We wrote
Yeah.
about him and
Yes.
his story. My sister, she's a vocal artist.
Yes.
She has used her music to heal. And I've written a couple of the songs that she's sung. In 2017, she did a whole series of singing to heal during the Christmas time. And I've been inspired by her. She's also has, we partner up. I've been also, I support her in this, and we talk a lot about using our talents and our art to heal our communities. And so, speaking about what you just shared about using rap,
Yeah.
my sister has used her own music, her voice,
Yep.
to sing. And I think music. This comes to back to the point about music and listening to it and being able to be
Hmm.
vulnerable. And
Hmm.
the code that you mentioned. Like it's okay to let go when we are listening to music. That's
Hmm.
almost like a mass.
Yeah. Yeah. You can.
You put on, like, I'm listening to this music so I can let go, but really I need to cry. So
Or you're doing it during a movie too. I cried during movies, and you like when you cry during a movie, like the movie's really sad. Like, yeah, and like it's okay. Like, you know,
yeah,
maybe you wanted to cry a long time ago, but you watched the movie
I
that's
know.
sad on purpose.
Or
Which
that, or
I,
that
I
the
ain't gonna
scene
lie. There's some movies
triggers
that like
me.
definitely like off the break. I'm gonna like hit a certain point. I'm like, I can't watch this. I'll start crying. Like,
Right.
like Marley and Me. It's already a wrap. It's a wrap when I see Marley and Me. That movie makes me cry off the break every
Right.
time. Or
So
The
yeah.
Fox and the Hound. You ever seen that cartoon, The Fox and the Hound?
No, I
That,
have not.
I don't know why they made that a Disney cartoon, but that was like the saddest cartoon I've ever seen in my entire life. The Fox.
Yeah.
Don't watch that. Like if you're in a good mood, don't watch The Fox and the Hound. It's not a fun.
Oh God.
It's not a fun kids movie. It's like
Okay, so
horrible. It's horrible.
okay, I will make sure of that.
It's on
Right.
Disney
So
Plus too.
yes.
Now
So
they
to
got
answer your question,
all the movies on Disney Plus. So at all costs, y'all avoid Fox and the Hound. But it's but if you're crying watching The Fox and the Hound, people would understand because they're like, this is a sad
right.
movie. I
But
think
see,
it's
I know we're talking a lot about crying, but whatever outlet to release,
yes.
however way of releasing. I
Yeah.
think that's in itself, right? And so yeah, so thank you for asking these wonderful questions about art and music and
Yeah.
healing and all that.
Well, I mean, I knew that was a special thing. I saw that your journey, and I saw I listened to your podcast, and it
Yeah.
just seemed, for me, it
Mhm.
just seemed like it wasn't just creativity for you. Like, it
Yeah.
seemed like it was deeper than that. And I connect, and and the reason why I wanted you on my podcast is because I think for me, there's for me, this is fun. This is my creative outlet, podcasting and stuff. But it's
Mhm.
also deeper for me. Like, it makes me feel good, or it's
Yeah.
my outlet.
Yes.
It's like it's a real outlet,
Yeah.
and then public speaking is another outlet. So it's a
Mhm.
way to express myself that's,
Mhm.
I guess, not norm, or
Mhm.
you know I don't know.
Mhm.
It's cool.
Beautiful.
So
And you're acting upon it, and
yeah. So,
yeah,
and I
thank
think
you. You're
everyone needs that. I think I agree with you. I
mhm.
think everyone needs
Mhm.
something creative to just help. Like, creativity sparks healing and new
Yeah.
ideas and innovation. And I think it doesn't have to be good. Like, that's what I want to tell people.
You gotta
Like,
let
to
that
do,
go.
yeah, you gotta let that go. It doesn't have to necessarily be good to be healing. Like,
Mhm.
because it's for
Mhm.
you. It's not for anyone else. I told people the other day I was going to
Yeah.
podcast regardless, or you're
Yes.
going to write regardless. Like, I'm going to write anyway. This is for
Mhm.
me. It's and I think people need to have that mindset with anything creative.
Oh,
Sing regardless.
yeah. Yep.
Dance regardless. Write
Mhm.
regardless, because it's not
Yeah.
for other people. It's for yourself.
For yourself. That's so beautiful.
And then eventually, if you do get good at it, then you can show it off to other people.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you were to take worst singer in the world, sing karaoke by yourself. It don't matter. Just still do it anyway.
Yeah, and they are having a ball of a time, and
Yeah,
they're gonna go home happy
yeah,
and you're gonna
yeah.
sleep very well.
Right, exactly.
Hey, that's
And
so beautiful.
I think that we could both agree upon that. If you felt like there was like one I can't do because, like, some
Mhm.
kind of excuse in regards to creativity, I always tell people, just start and
Yeah.
just do something,
Yeah.
because it's going to be for yourself.
Right. And what makes most sense to you? What do you enjoy doing, right?
Yeah,
Start with that.
yeah.
And you just do it. Yeah, just do little by little.
And then you'll feel good about it, and I think it will heal. Regardless, I think it will have I think it will have an unintentional,
Mhm.
unexpected healing thing. Like, you thought it was just writing, but at the end of the day, like, wow, I'm really enjoying it, or it's something I look forward to, or something like that. Like, it
Yes.
usually sneaks up on you like that. These creative things,
Yes.
like, you don't
And
go at it with that mindset of, oh,
mhm.
I'm going to write to heal myself. You mostly say, I'm going to do it because I think it's fun, but during the process, you
Yeah.
find that good
Yeah.
connection.
And that's great. In terms of defining what healing is, there's no definite way to define it, but it's
Yeah,
like feeling good, right? After
yeah,
you do, it feels good. You are there. If this activity or whatever you're doing has taken you to a different, like, mental escape, I mean, to me, that's healing, and that's really important to define what that looks like for you,
hmm
uh, and what it feels like for you. And so, just to kind of give a little tidbit on, like, what is healing. Like, I'm sure I get that question a lot. Like, what do you mean by that, Nancy? So it's a lot of it's how you define it and how it makes you feel good.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think healing doesn't mean like perfect. I think
Yeah.
healing means
Hmm.
like, if you get cut and you're healed, it still has a scar, and so it
Yeah.
never gets back to perfect, but
Nope.
it's not open, and it's not
Yeah.
it's not getting worse. That's what I think healing means
Right.
to me. I think
Mhm.
healing means closing it, and closing
Mhm.
whatever wound you have, so it
Yeah.
doesn't get worse.
Right. And
And
that wound doesn't control you.
yeah,
You control that wound,
yeah.
and you
And
move
then you tell
forward.
cool stories about it,
Yeah.
because yeah,
Oh yes.
yeah. So let's do a episode. This is the part of the episode we call shot for shot, where I ask you any random question. You get to ask me any random question. You want to
Oh
go first?
no.
I go first.
Okay.
Who, me go first?
Who go
Yeah,
first?
yeah. Who wants to go first? You go first. I go first.
Um, you can go first because I'm not sure what I'm doing.
Okay, so just shot for shot, it just means I get to ask you any one question.
Okay,
Uh,
go for it.
do you have any scars? And if you have a scar, does it come along with a cool story?
Yes, I do have a scar on my right leg, right below my knee because I rode a bike and I think I almost ran into, I fell and I scraped up against grass and yeah, yeah, it left a huge scar. I think I remember this banana, it's like a banana seat
Well,
bike.
how long ago did it happen?
This was back when I was young. I was still in elementary
Was it
school.
what? See, listen. And then people ask you, did you ever have to like, did you try to play it off and say it happened some other way to be like tough, or you just told them you fell off your bike?
I told them I fell off a bike. This is true.
You say you got like you didn't get like a street fight or something. I don't know.
Oh no. Is it my turn?
Yep.
Let's see. The first question: McDonald's or Wendy's?
Oh, that's easy. Dan, you have to give me another question because that's easy. Because
Okay.
Wendy's all day, every day. I like Wendy's. I like the 4 for $4. I think
Four,
they have.
four.
I think they have better nuggets, spicy nuggets, of course,
I agree.
and they have better burgers. And I don't know, man. That's just I don't know. It's like a no contest, man. If someone, like, which is true. My drunk eats is definitely Wendy's, and if someone's like, "Yo, we're drunk. Let's go through a drive-through," it's Wendy's hands down before McDonald's. So yeah,
Okay.
Wendy's and the Frosty. You can't go
Banana
free.
frosty. Oh yes, gotta have that. Okay.
You actually dip your French fry into the Frosty.
No, I don't do that.
I do. Okay.
I do mayonnaise. I mix my mayonnaise and ketchup together and I eat. That's how I eat
Okay,
my
that's
fries.
okay. I give me another cool one.
Another cool one. Gosh. Now I'm on the spot. Gosh. Ooh. After this whole health pandemic, what is the first thing you're gonna do?
Oh yes. See, no, that's perfect. Um, I am going to hug and high five all the people that are comfortable with hugs and high fives. I mean, like I said, I got a wife and kids. I love them. I love
Yeah.
them dearly. But I'm tired of just this. I want to see people. I definitely anyone in my office, anyone at Mason, anyone
Yeah.
outside in the public, if you are comfortable with hugs and high fives and some kind of physical touch without getting sick, I'm here for it. Like
Oh,
I literally want to just stand out with a sign in the middle of campus and say
free hugs.
I'm giving out hugs because I
Yeah.
think that's one of the biggest things that I'm missing right now. I know this is a very serious issue.
Mhm.
I am sticking to the parameters of social
Right.
distancing so people don't get worse. But I
Yeah.
really think I'm telling you right now, like I'm seeing you right now on the Zoom, but
Yeah.
like for real, I don't care how advanced we get in technology.
I
Like being
know.
around real people face to face, there's nothing that's gonna beat it. Like I can imagine this feels like to me like if we're in a space station and I get to Zoom with everybody, it still doesn't feel the same as
It
you're still
doesn't.
alone in the space station.
Right. Yeah.
Like I still feel
Hmm.
some of that connection, and it's like I
Right.
don't know. I feel like it's like my battery is getting turned off, my social battery.
I get you.
So,
I get
so
you.
that's the first thing I'm gonna do is just hugs and high fives. Shoot, if I was rich though, I would just literally have a free for all open bar party and just invite anyone that wants to come and have the
Mm-hmm.
largest gathering I could possibly have
Mm-hmm.
without worrying about people getting sick. I'll just be like, yo, free for all, whoever comes. I'd put on Facebook, like, if you see this, just show up kind of thing. But I'm not
Oh
rich.
my
So I'm gonna
God.
have to settle for free hugs and high fives.
Yes. Start with what you have.
Yeah, start with my resources. Actually, I'm gonna do that last. That's gonna be my last question for you. What would be the first thing that you would like to do post pandemic?
Yeah, so the reason I moved out to the Midwest is to be closer to my family. And so imagine I have to social isolate myself now from my family. So the first thing was to go see my little nieces and nephew. I have
Yes.
a niece who just celebrated her birthday today, and I'm I'm so sad that I'm not there to eat cake with her.
Did
And
y'all
so
do like a Zoom thing? How'd y'all do that?
yeah, we did a live, a Facebook live to us
Yeah.
and sing
But
happy
see,
birthday. Yeah, but it's not the
I was
same.
about to say it don't feel the
Yeah.
same, right? No,
Yeah. So the first thing is fire, take them out, take my little nieces and nephew out. Yeah.
that's amazing.
Mhm.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, this has been a great episode.
Oh, thank you.
And I hope we learned some new things. I did. I learned that the H is silent.
Yeah.
The H is silent, but I definitely learned about new cultures and things like that. And
Mhm.
definitely because of you, I did actually Google it, and I learned from my friends new
Yeah.
things. So I think it's good to have diversity in your friends and
Oh
just
yeah.
be open to learning new cultures.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so maybe one day, if I ever visit the Midwest, you could take me to a festival or a temple or something to celebrate your culture. I love to do that.
Yeah,
Or
and then
even
we'll
try
go
to,
for.
or the best place for me to learn culture is through my stomach too. So I'll eat
Oh, we
anything.
have a lot of that. There's we call it the Hmong Como Market or the Hmong Village. It is like, yeah, I will definitely take there. There's food. It's like a whole like vendors
Oh, you know me,
market.
I'll eat anything. Actually, I
That's
look,
why we get along very
I
well.
look, I look at the dude like Andrew Zimmerman versus not, and but Bizarre Foods or that dude. I mean, I'm like, man, I could do that. I can eat anything. I'll eat any different part of the animal. I'm not scared of nothing. So you definitely do not worry. I'm not a sheltered eater. I'll eat anything.
Yeah, we have
And,
one
and
life to live, so this
yeah,
is great.
yeah. So the stage is yours. This is the segment of the show I call shout outs and plugs.
Okay.
It's an opportunity to shout out anyone that you want to shout out. And then
Um,
plugs is anything such as you repeat it again,
sure.
any ventures, any resources or any websites that you provide,
Yep.
Instagram, things like that, social media people can follow you. So this is, and then obviously I will ask that you send me all this stuff so I can put it in the show notes so that anyone that listens to the show can follow up with those resources that you share. So the
Oh,
stage is yours. Shout outs and plugs.
yay! So I want to shout out to my Studio Pause members, our Studio Pause friends out in Arlington, Virginia. That's Sushmita, that's Kara, that's Corey, that's Mary, that's Sharmila, that's Rana, and Hanan. I want to shout out to that I miss them so much right now. And let's see, I want to shout out to my family that they're listening right now as well. During this whole pandemic. I miss you all so much. In terms of where to find me, how to connect with me, I have a blog website. It's like nancyxiong.com. Right now, for the month of April, I'm featuring a poem of day. Again, it's my outlet. So I am using this. It's April is National Poetry Month, so I'm
Mm,
using this as a theme for me to share my creativity through social media. So nancyxiong.com. You can also follow me on Facebook at Nancy Xiong as well. I also have a like an art where I share my art pieces. It's called Sincerely Nancy, and so I'll share that with Phil here, and
mhm.
I'll follow me, and you can see what I do.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely listening. I want one day have that book or that podcast or that poetry thing, and I'm gonna definitely buy it. Like,
Yes. I'm in the process of trying to publish my own poetry book.
well,
Yeah.
then when you do, I might buy it.
Oh,
Like
oh,
for
thank
sure.
you. It's yeah, I'm very excited for it. And so, yes,
Speak
thank
into
you.
it. So speaking into existence, it's gonna happen.
Yes, I believe in that.
Yeah. So thank you, Nancy, for joining
Yeah.
me today. Thank you, listeners. If you have any questions, you can call the podcast at 571-336-6560. Leave questions. It's at positivefilter.com. Positive Filter is spelled with a PH. Is on Instagram, Twitter, all the different outlets. Please share this episode with your family and friends, and just continue to be kind to one another.
Mhm.
Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.